Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And today we're talking about a trend, which is for vinyl records. It seems lots of people are listening to music on vinyl records these days.
Yeah.
But our article is also about environmental protection, okay? So we're asking the question, is the comeback of vinyl records a threat to the planet? So yeah, more and more people are listening to these albums, so they're making a comeback. But is that a threat to the environment?
We're going to talk about that. Actually, Tom and I have a mutual friend, Mike, who loves vinyl records. Every time I see him, he's got another bag full of some new records he picked up. I understand that the quality of the sound, if you have a good stereo system, is beautiful. But for me, I pretty much just listen to MP3 all the time. So we are going to talk about whether this comeback is actually going to hurt our planet, hurt our Earth. We're going to talk about why that might be the case. But first, guys, before we do anything, we're going to read through today's lesson. Stay tuned.
When people listen to music today, they typically use streaming services like YouTube or Spotify. However, traditional formats like vinyl records have regained popularity in recent times. Vinyl records are circular discs that store music in grooves on their surfaces and are played on a turntable. As the turntable's needle runs along these grooves, it picks up vibrations and translates them into sound. The history of vinyl records dates back to the late 1800s, but material and technological challenges delayed mass production until the 1950s. Despite early versions having short playtimes and poor sound quality, vinyl records introduced a new era in entertainment by allowing people to enjoy music at home. Their popularity peaked in the 1970s, but then declined with the successive arrival of cassettes, CDs, and digital music. Surprisingly, in the past 2 decades, vinyl records have made a substantial comeback. Many fans contend that they provide a more authentic listening experience than digital formats. This comeback has led contemporary artists like Taylor Swift and Bruno Mars to release their music on vinyl records. However, this revival also has its disadvantages. The production of vinyl records involves the use of polyvinyl chloride, PVC, which is hard to recycle, and their packaging often includes single-use plastics. Furthermore, the trend of releasing multiple editions and colored vinyl records also has a negative environmental impact. Fortunately, some musicians are using their influence to make a difference. Billie Eilish has spoken out against releasing numerous vinyl record editions and advocates for sustainability. She now uses recyclable materials for her vinyl records and their packaging. Similarly, the members of Coldplay have adopted eco-friendly practices for their latest releases, with each vinyl record being made from 9 recycled plastic bottles. As the music industry becomes more eco-aware, we as consumers should also contemplate the environmental impact of our choices. Let's embrace sustainable music consumption for a greener future. Okay, everybody, it's time for us to discuss the contents of today's lesson. We're talking about vinyl records, and they're making a comeback. Now, many years ago, when I listened to vinyl records, we never called them that. We did know that they were made of vinyl, but we just called them records. Okay, I have a record collection. I have maybe 100 or 200 albums that I listen to from time to time. And I was so happy when CDs came out because I got rid of all those albums. I sent them down to the local thrift store, or I gave them to my nephews because they like that sort of thing. And now I guess people are starting to listen to those albums again. I would not do that myself. I'm happy with digital formats, but yeah, records are really big and cumbersome and they're heavy, but some people like them. Are you a big fan of vinyl records?
I still have some. I didn't bring them to Taiwan with me, but when I was growing up, we would call the big records LPs, long playing, because they were much bigger than the little 45s that you could buy that just had one hit on one side, and then you'd flip it over and it'd have another song. It wasn't a hit usually. It was just some other song from that album.
The B-side.
Yeah, the B-side. So we're going to talk about these records having a comeback. Yeah, I still have mine. I couldn't bear to throw them out. They're in a storage facility in America. I'm going back soon. I may throw them out at that point because if I'm not going to bring them here, why do I have them? But yeah, we do have a friend who collects these. And there are some places, at least in Taipei area, where you can buy them. They have a good little market going for the vinyl records. What is vinyl anyway, Tom?
It's kind of like a material that is fake plastic, basically. Sometimes, of course, you can have records made with vinyl, but also maybe the seats in your car are made with vinyl. It's kind of a fake leather, and in this particular case, it is a synthetic resin, and it's got polyvinyl chloride, or PVC, and that's a polymer, and they use it for all sorts of things like wallpapers and phonograph records
Pipes.
like we're talking about.
Oh, isn't PVC made for pipes, too?
Could be,
Yeah.
indeed. Maybe they use it for clothing, who knows, but that's what vinyl is, and it's making a comeback. Remember, if you make a comeback, of course, you were popular before, you stopped being popular, and then you came back. I think in Taiwan there have been numerous celebrities who have made a comeback. They were famous for a while, they disappeared, and then they came back and were popular again. So yes, vinyl records are popular again, and people are listening to them quite frequently, although I think still most people listen to downloads mostly.
So when people do listen to music today, they usually use streaming services. YouTube could qualify, but I think a streaming service that's probably more popular is Spotify. I don't like streaming services. I like to actually own the music I listen to. So I will buy what I like and then download it to my computer and play it that way. But a lot of people get online and use these services. I think YouTube, you don't necessarily have to pay for YouTube to listen to the music on YouTube. Although if you're listening for like a radio service or nonstop, the play of songs, maybe there is a YouTube service you can pay money for. I don't like to pay money if I don't have to. Spotify, you sign up for and then you pay a small fee if you want to listen to music. So these are new services that people are using. However, traditional or old-fashioned formats, you might say, like vinyl records, have regained popularity in recent times. I don't think things like cassette tapes or 8-track tapes are going to regain popularity or make a comeback because they break and they're not very good long-term. Although vinyl records can scratch, we should probably talk about that. But when you talk about a format, you're just talking about what version something is in. There are lots of different formats out there. There's a format, you could put a format out there as an app. A format could be a movie. It could be lots of different things. It could be a book. There are lots of different formats we use in our world today. And one of these traditional formats, of course, are the old-fashioned vinyl records.
Right, along with cassettes or reel-to-reel tape, as you said, 8-track tapes, cassettes, etc. I think cassettes are actually making a comeback, too, in some way. Not as big as vinyl records, but yes, they have regained popularity in recent times. Vinyl records are circular discs that store music in grooves on their surfaces and are played on a turntable. Okay, so when I was in university, of course, I had a turntable, and the turntable itself has a cartridge and a stylus, and those things affect the quality of the sound. And so that's the thing that turns around and plays a record. We've got grooves in the surface of the record. They're just these kind of dents, these long alleys, I guess you could say, or I don't know, canyons or whatever of space basically on the record, and the needle goes through and picks up the vibrations. So yeah, it says here they're played on a turntable. As the turntable's needle runs along these grooves or runs in these grooves, it picks up vibrations and translates them into sound. So yes, again, the vibrations hit the stylus first, and then the vibration goes into the cartridge, and that goes into the turntable, into your amplifier or whatever, and then you've got sound. And that's what happens here. So it translates those vibrations into sound. Translate here does not mean you're taking one language and speaking it in another language. It means you're basically just taking something and putting it into a different format. You get the vibrations and you turn them into sound.
You do. Now, the history of vinyl records dates back to the late 1800s. So these have been around a long, long time. Of course, they've gotten better. The quality was improved over time. But material and technological challenges delayed mass production until the 1950s. So when they made vinyl records long, long ago, they could only make a few at a time, maybe one or two at a time. There wasn't mass production available back then. Mass production is when you produce a lot of things at one time. Usually you need a big factory with machinery and people in there doing lots of work to produce lots of products quickly. But this wasn't possible until the 1950s, and that's when they started making all of those vinyl records quickly. And everybody got excited about that. I remember my parents had a lot of vinyl records when I was growing up, and they were teenagers, I think, in the 50s. Yeah, pretty much. So it was kind of a fun time for music, I would say.
Right. Now, despite early versions having short playtimes and poor sound quality, vinyl records introduced a new era in entertainment by allowing people to enjoy music at home. So many years ago, of course, if you wanted to enjoy music, you had to listen to the radio, or you had to buy the sheet music.
Or go to a concert.
Indeed, hear somebody play it for you, live music there. But later on, of course, the records came out, and then you could listen to music in your home, starting with the 78-speed records that had one song on each side. They were in mono, of course. They weren't stereo. And so later on, they were able to lengthen the time on records. You had different speeds, 45, 33 and a third, etc. And you could have an album with about an hour's worth of music, maybe 45 minutes or so on side A and side B. And so you had better sound quality, and therefore you could actually go to the record store, buy an album, take it home, and listen to it on your own hi-fi or your own stereo.
Oh, that was a lot of fun. I remember those days. So their popularity peaked. If you peak, it's your top point. So if a popularity is the subject, it just means when something was the most popular, when something was at its peak. So you can use peak as a noun or a verb. When it peaked in the 1970s, it then started declining because we had a new format that was invented and introduced to the market, and that was the cassette tape, which I used like crazy when I was in college in particular. So successive just means something that follows something else. So we had the vinyl record, and then the next successive format was the cassette tape.
Right, and then, of course, we had CDs, compact discs, and then digital music for download, MP3 files, etc., or from streaming services. And surprisingly, in the past 2 decades, vinyl records have made a substantial comeback. So they've not only made a comeback, but it's a substantial comeback. It's quite big. It's not just a fringe activity with a few people here and there buying records. Lots of people are getting into buying albums. I'm not going to do it. I'm done with that. I've been there. I've done that. I like my CDs or my MP3s. Thank you very much. But still, they're making a substantial comeback. Lots of people are enjoying LPs again or vinyl records.
So substantial is a pretty big amount. So if somebody says, oh, I just got a substantial raise at work, they're not talking about, $1 NT or $2 an hour. They're talking about a big amount of money, I would say. So when you use substantial, it needs to be a pretty considerable size, or it has to have more importance or worth, whatever you're talking about. I had a substantial meal last night at the restaurant, meaning you ate quite a bit and got really full. We're going to continue talking about this, guys, but first we're going to take a quick break, listen to our Chinese teacher, and then we'll be back.
Hello everyone, 我是派老师。今天讲解的是4月7号 Unit 4 Is the comeback of vinyl records a threat to the planet? 这个单元是文意选填的练习题，内容介绍的是 黑胶唱片。在阅读这篇文章以前，老师原本以为黑胶唱片已经算是时代的眼泪，可是看到一些流行歌手也发行黑胶唱片，我们可以知道这算是一波不可以忽视的复古风。那在主题解说前，要再次提醒大家，在答题的时候先看看被答的选项，标示出它们的词性。虽然这些字有时候不止一种词性，可是根据句子的结构，可以判断这一题的空格大概要填什么样词性的单字。那再根据文意呢，找出正确的选项，这样会比较有效率。好，那我们一起来解题。请看到第一题，前面第一句提到，大家现在听音乐一般都会使用像 YouTube 或者 Spotify 这些串流服务。再来就是第一题的题干，但是近来像黑胶唱片这些传统格式 have 空格欢迎好或者流行。那请同学呢看到这个句子缺乏主要动词，前面的 have 是现在完成式的助动词，所以后面的空格要找一个过去分词，可以和 popularity 搭配，因此呢选 regained 重新获得。好，整句话的意思是，但是最近传统的黑胶唱片又重新受到青睐。第一题正确答案是 C regained。 我们紧接着看第二题，黑胶唱片是个圆盘，音乐呢就储存在表面的沟槽里，要用唱盘 turntable 播放。再来就是第二题的题干，转盘的针头沿着沟槽移动的时候，针头会空格震动，并且呢把这个震动转化成声音。第二题的句子逗点之后是主要子句，主词是 it， 后面的 and 是对的连接词，连接两个动词词组，前面的动词词组少了加上第三人称现在式的一般动词，考量文意的前后连贯，因此我们选 B picks up 捕捉捉取。整句话的意思是，转盘的针头沿着这些沟槽移动的时候会捕捉震动，把这个震动呢转化成声音。第二题正确答案是 B。 我们接着看第三题，请看第二段 Despite early versions 这里。好，尽管早期的黑胶唱片播放时间短，音质不好，那再来就是我们第三题的主要题干 Vinyl Records introduce a new 空格 in entertainment。 Introduce 是及物动词，后面要有名词当受词。我们从选项里挑选一个符合前后文意的单数名词，所以第三题答案选 G era。 这表示有了黑胶唱片，大众可以在家中欣赏音乐，因而开启崭新的娱乐时代。紧接着是第四题，黑胶唱片受欢迎的程度在20世纪70年代到达巅峰， But then 空格 with the successive arrival of cassettes, CDs and digital music。 But 是对等连接词，连接前面的 peaked， 后面也需要有个动词过去式。考量前后文意，我们选 H declined 衰退，表示但随着录音带、CD、数位音乐等陆续问世，黑胶唱片随之没落。第四题答案选 H。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. It's our trend unit, and we're talking about vinyl records. Something that might seem kind of old-fashioned to a lot of our listeners. But guess what? They're making a comeback. They're becoming more and more popular. They're regaining popularity, you could say. But some folks are concerned that they might be a threat to the planet. I think it has something to do with how they're made.
Indeed. So this comeback, of course, has led contemporary artists like Taylor Swift and Bruno Mars to release their music on vinyl records in addition to other formats like downloads or whatever. I don't know if they're releasing their music on CDs at this point, but in any case, we're talking about modern artists or contemporary artists. These are people in modern times who normally would not release their music on vinyl. We would talk about old artists like the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or people like that. They certainly would have released their music on albums, on vinyl records. But we even got modern people thinking, hey, we got to help out these people who want to listen to LPs again. So let's release our music on vinyl. And these artists include Taylor Swift and Bruno Mars.
And the reason they're doing this is that a lot of fans are contending or arguing, they're saying this is their opinion, that they provide a more authentic listening experience than digital formats. For them, at least, as they listen with their ears, they think, it sounds more authentic. It sounds real. It sounds much better if I can listen to this music on a vinyl record. I can say that, yes, Tom, Taylor Swift and Bruno Mars are releasing their music on CDs still.
Okay.
But there are a lot of formats out there to get music, depending on what you prefer. I think today our market is so big and there's so many people that have money that they want to spend on music that they're willing to offer different formats. So Taylor Swift is young-ish. She's not that young anymore. But she felt like even her own fans, who are definitely younger people, would appreciate listening to her music on vinyl records. And of course, Bruno Mars is fun. He wants to release his on vinyl records as well. When you talk about contemporary, which is one of our vocabulary words, it just means people that are living or something that's happening at this current time. So these are contemporary artists. These are artists that are performing live and they're well today. They're not artists from, 30 or 40, 50 years ago. They're actually performing as we speak.
Yep, as we speak. And we should also mention that there's a high-definition audio format for download in addition to YouTube and Spotify. I think there's one called Tidal where the music is downloaded or streamed at very high quality at a very high sampling rate. So you could check that out. It might actually sound better than LPs. But we do have this revival of vinyl records, and this revival also has its disadvantages. Okay, so of course, if you talk about something being good and bad, being helpful or being harmful, then we talk about advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so what's the advantage of going to this school? Well, it's well known, they got good classes, but the disadvantage is that it's far away and it costs more money. So, of course, everything has advantages and disadvantages. And yes, this revival has some bad things about it. What are they?
We're going to talk about it. Another way to talk about advantages and disadvantages, guys, is the pros and cons. Oh, what are the pros and cons of this? And so sometimes you'll make a list, you'll have the cons, the bad things on the left side and the pros on the right side to make a decision. So what are some of the disadvantages? Well, the production of vinyl records involves the use of polyvinyl chloride or PVC. I know it because they always talk about PVC pipes. So that's how I know of this. I didn't know that vinyl was made out of that, actually. So it's hard to recycle this particular product. And their repackaging or packaging often includes single-use plastics. Most of the plastics out there are single-use, which is really doing a number on our oceans. That's what I worry about is our oceans. So when you recycle something, you take something and you break it down and then you reuse it. You take that raw material that was in the form of something else in an earlier life and you use it to make something new. Not everything can be recycled. I learned when I was in, I think it was in grad school, I learned that all of the recycling that we were doing was actually not being used. Most of it was being thrown in the garbage. So we can feel good about recycling, but a lot of the stuff that we put in the recycling bin is actually thrown out as trash.
Yeah, I suspect the recycling stuff we give to the second truck that comes along is actually going straight into the incinerator. It's just easier that way. But that's another subject for another day. Furthermore, in addition, the trend of releasing multiple editions of a record and colored vinyl records also has a negative environmental impact. Indeed, there are special editions in which the vinyl won't be black, but it will be a different color. Maybe that will look cool on your turntable as it spins in circles.
Oh.
And fortunately, the good thing is that some musicians are using their influence to make a difference. Okay, so of course, musicians are aware of these problems. And nowadays, of course, we're supposed to be environmentally friendly. And so we got some musicians who know this, and they're using their power, their popularity, and their influence to actually do something about this.
Yeah, here is one of our vocab words, guys. Fortunately, which just means, well, it's a good thing this is happening. We're telling you about some bad stuff, but even though that's true, here's the good news. Fortunately, some musicians are speaking out with their voices. They have a bigger platform, you could say, to get a message out. And here's one, Billie Eilish. She's spoken out against releasing numerous vinyl record editions, and she advocates for sustainability. If you advocate for something, you support something very strongly. You're an advocate. That's the person, the advocate. But if you do it, that's the verb. You advocate for something. So she's advocating for sustainability. Sustainability is something we talk about a lot when we're talking environmental friendliness. It's if something's sustainable, you're able to do it, or it's able to be maintained at a certain rate or level. You don't completely destroy, for example, a natural resource. As something sustainable, if you use it, you still have more left, or you're not completely diminishing the supply. So sustainability is pretty important.
And she now uses recyclable materials for her vinyl records and their packaging. So she must use something else besides PVCs to manufacture the vinyl records, and maybe recyclable paper for the cover or whatever. Similarly, in the same way, the members of Coldplay, that English band, have adopted eco-friendly practices for their latest releases, with each vinyl record being made from 9 recycled plastic bottles. Okay, so they take plastic bottles and they melt the plastic down, and then they use it to make records. So I guess that's fairly environmentally friendly on behalf of the band Coldplay.
And as the music industry becomes more eco-aware, aware of the environment and trying to save our planet, we as consumers should also contemplate or think deeply about the environmental impact of our choices. So these things are really important. If you're a consumer, you're a person who uses goods and services. You consume them. So this is pretty important to remember. And our article ends here with saying we need to embrace sustainable music consumption for a greener future. This is some advice, at least.
Indeed. So, yes, think about these things when you go down to your record store and pick up a vinyl record. And I'm sure other formats are harmful to the environment as well. Like streaming services, of course, have the music stored in some data center somewhere, and those use a lot of electricity as well. So it's kind of difficult to know what is environmentally friendly and what isn't. I suspect they all harm the environment to a certain degree. Maybe you should just listen to music live without the amplifiers and the electricity and stuff like that.
I support that. I support supporting performers and musicians. I think that's wonderful. Live music is wonderful. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Here comes our Chinese teacher.
第5题主词 many fans 后面需要主要动词引领后面 that 开头的名词子句。我们选 I contend 主张声称，表示许多乐迷认为黑胶提供了比数位格式更加真实的聆听体验。第5题答案选 I。 再来请同学看第6题，空格应该要填的是单数名词，搭配前面的指示词 this 作为主词。从文意来看，前一个句子提到了 this comeback 卷土重来，因此第6题空格要找一个同义词，所以第6题选 D revival 复兴，表示这样的复兴也有缺点。再来我们看第7题，黑胶唱片的生产会用到 PVC， 这种材料不好回收，而且黑胶唱片的包装通常都会有空格塑胶。那空格应该要填形容词，修饰后面的名词 plastics， 正确选项的词义应该和环保有关，对吧？所以答案选 E single use 一次性的。再来看到第8题，前句提到还好有些歌手发挥自己的影响力，减少黑胶唱片再兴所带来的环境冲击。接着就是题干，从这个 Billy 这里开始哦。好， 怪奇比利他就已经公开反对发行多个黑胶唱片版本 and 空格环境永续。那空格呢，应该要填单数动词，搭配单数的主词 Billy。好，那时态呢，则和对等连接词 and 连接的前半句动词 has spoken out 都一样，它们都是现在式，所以呢，我们要选 F advocates for 就是提倡。那再来我们看第9题，第9题的空格呢，应该要填形容词，修饰后面的名词 practices 做法。前面提到怪奇比利提倡永续发展，它黑胶唱片使用的材料是可以回收的。那这一句呢，用 similarly 开头，那讲到了酷玩乐团成员他们在最新发行的唱片当中使用环保的做法，所以答案选 J eco-friendly。最后是第10题，助动词 should 之后空格应该要填原形动词，指出随着音乐产业变得更加重视环保，我们身为消费者也应该仔细考虑我们的选择对环境的影响，共创更加绿色的未来。那答案呢？第10题的答案选 A contemplate 仔细的考虑。以上就是我们针对文艺选填所做的中文解题。好，谢谢大家。
Okay, everybody, that brings us to the end of our program for today. Thank you for joining us. And again, make sure you check out our content on YouTube and Facebook for more information. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.